Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, and you're listening to Incredible Life Creator Podcast. My guest today is Toye Oshunbiyi. Toye is a husband and father of 2 kids, and outside from that role, he helps leaders and entrepreneurs to build businesses that grow from startup to scale up, to empower their staff and free up their time through his coaching and training programs. Toye has worked as a leadership coach, leadership consultant, and business coach and trainer for over 20 years, gaining experience in trends on entrepreneurship, leadership, and future trends of work. Welcome, Toye.
Hey, Kimberly, it's a pleasure and honor to be here. Really excited about this.
So let's start by just telling us a little bit about, who you are, where you grew up, and how you got to the point where you are today.
Well, that's how much time do we have? In brief, so I was born in London, where I am right now, to my wonderful parents, and number 5 in the family. We're 6 children. And when I was around 6 years old, we went to Nigeria. For me, it was the first time. That's where my parents are originally from. And I was there till about 26 after finishing university. I studied business administration. While I was there, in the last year, I did something called a youth service, where you go out and teach. They just send you to work in a school or in a business. And I started teaching economics and business administration. And that's where I sort of got a passion for teaching. And came back to London and started working in sales and then training, and worked for my church, a not-for-profit, and then got into really understand the importance of leadership in an organization. And from then on, I just started to pursue that, started my own company, a coaching and training business that was going on for some time until the market crashed. I then started working for an organization, offering my service there. And now I'm doing what I do, which is leadership coaching, helping leaders and entrepreneurs grow their business. So in a nutshell, in a summary, that's what has happened over the years.
Wow. So who are the people that you work with the most? Are they large corporations? Are they small businesses?
So the target audience that I'm focusing on now would be startup leaders. And there's a reason for that, because I have a passion that entrepreneurs can help change our world. And as an entrepreneur, you have an idea, and it takes a lot of support to be able to bring that into fruition. And so my main mission right now is to create products and services that support entrepreneurs so that they can bring their idea into fruition. And if it's to benefit society, we find from research that a society actually will benefit when better products and services are being put out in the market. So that's the target audience. And that'll be more, and that'll also be maybe organizations that, leaders that do also have staff, because that's where the big challenges start as well.
Got it. So do you want to talk more about how businesses matter in our society? Talk more about, you said if we have better products and services, it improves things.
Yeah, well, it's something that it took some time for me to see this connection, because in the past, in some situations, some people would see business leaders as people who are there just to make money from people. But when you really look around and you just look around your room, you find out that every man-made product that you have around you that you're benefiting from came from somebody's idea. And it came from an entrepreneur who had an idea to bring something into fruition, into the marketplace, and then we all benefit. And so what I then realized was, wow, if you look at societies where entrepreneurship is encouraged. It's not always the case, but you can actually see that the welfare of people is normally elevated. And if that actually becomes more of the mindset where people can actually develop and grow their own things, they can start their own things, that I think that overall society will benefit from it. In in the UK, over the last number of years, we've had some huge challenges to do with knife crime, where we have teenagers who are now on the streets and for some reason just creating havoc. And there's been some research that's been done where they've been able to pinpoint certain stages in life and also demographics that show that these teenagers, part of why they're on the streets is because there's no job for them. And part of why there's no job for them is because we don't have enough entrepreneurs that are starting businesses that are scaling up to hire people. So you sort of see this domino effect all of a sudden, then you realize that what we're talking about here is actually a huge deal. And that's why I have this big perspective on this.
That is amazing, and that is true. Without entrepreneurs, we have no products. We
Mm.
don't have jobs um,
Yeah.
for people to work at. So, wow. And I know that you are a reader. You love to read. You have
Yeah.
read thousands of books. Why is it important to read? Why is it important to keep learning?
Well, that's a really good question because I think for me personally, it's more like a habit. And I think it started when I was really young and we had these encyclopedias in the house and I just used to read them. And then from then on, I just found it fascinating just to learn. Didn't always necessarily correlate to my exams in school, but I've just been an avid reader, and since I've been working as a learning and professional, it just suits me anyway. But I think the world that we're in today, it's the world that would definitely benefit the self learner, and we see based on what we're learning about how the internet is changing many things that there's a lot of knowledge out there.
Yeah.
And so if you're not really proactively seeking the right knowledge, it will be to your own detriment. And so the other thing is, talking about leadership, leaders are readers, and you can do this research on and on and on. They say Warren Buffett reads every day. Bill Gates sets aside a whole month just to read. Mark Zuckerberg started reading about one or two books every 2 weeks. So you have a lot of entrepreneurs who are role models in that. And so I think the fact that we have so many people writing books, it's easy to become an expert in any field. There's a common saying that if you read and study out a certain topic for the next 1 to 5 years, you can become an expert on it. And so ever since then, I've just decided to have that as a habit. And but more important now, it's not just reading; it's about how to then apply it. And I think that the challenge we're going to face moving forward is not just having the knowledge. The biggest challenge is actually putting that knowledge into practice. And sometimes that's my own challenge as well.
Exactly, because there is so much knowledge out there in even YouTube videos, everything. There's
Mm,
just so much information, and we can learn and learn and learn, but if we don't apply, then
that's
that's a
right.
problem. And you said something about reading the right books. So
Mm.
let's say there's a young entrepreneur out there and he's thinking, what books should I read? What are the right books?
Well, that's a good question. I think, first of all, if the person is just starting, they are thinking about building their own business, I would definitely suggest that the first book would be Seven Habits of Highly Effective People. It's a book that I always recommend because it deals with something that is always going to be fundamental, no matter how large an organization you lead. Self-leadership will be the first and the consistent area to work on. And the seven habits really explains the mindset that is needed for you to become a learner. And that will be the first book. And then when it comes to some of the practical aspects of building a business, definitely Lean Startup um, by Eric, I've forgotten his name now. But yeah, Lean Startup. And then also there's a Startup by Steve Blank. Those would be some really good books to read that really give you the practical aspects of how to build a startup from scratch. And then from then on, definitely read a lot of books on marketing. Seth Godin would be a good person to study out. Mm-hmm. And then also sales books, understanding the importance of sales. And there could be some good old books by Chet Holmes, Sales Machine. Would be a good book. So just to sort of have that perspective in terms of how to then develop your library of knowledge based on these key principles. These books have been written quite a number of years, and they've been tried and tested. And so I think that would be a good place to start, just to name a few.
Yes, I know you have more than a few.
So Eric Ries, that's his name, Eric Ries.
Eric Ries. Okay. So, we're talking about, new entrepreneurs starting, but what's the difference between being an entrepreneur and actually being a leader?
Yeah, it's something that over the years, I think we might not necessarily think that there's a distinction. But when we look at some of the competencies that are needed to start something from scratch, I don't think every leader has that capacity. I think when we talk about leadership, for instance, we can say a president can be a good leader, but he's definitely not starting like the nation from scratch. Mm-hmm. And so entrepreneurship definitely involves a lot of dealing with resilience, dealing with seeing opportunities before other people can see it. And it's almost like seeing the vision of something. Like, as I said, a lot of the products that we have, they've come from somebody's mind's eye. They've seen it before it became a reality. So what we find is that there definitely a certain set of skills and competencies that entrepreneurs have. Seeking opportunity would be one of them. Knowing how to build a team from scratch. Yes, that's something that can also be a leadership skill, but actually knowing how to win people over to buy into the idea before it comes into fruition is it's an entrepreneurial kind of skill set. And then dealing with the rough and the smooth that comes with the ups and the downs are more entrepreneurial skill sets. Then, even if your product or service is taken off and you're selling a lot, this is now where leadership skills come in. Because when you build your team, in the first stages of a business, maybe you're hands-on, you're doing a lot of the work yourself, you're doing the marketing, doing the sales, doing the accounting, there's a lot of roles that you play. Then it starts to move into more of a leadership role, knowing how to delegate, knowing how to communicate effectively to different types of personality types. Now, these are leadership skills, knowing when to let go, knowing how to free yourself up so that you can continue to think in a forward mindset. Those are leadership skills. So that's the distinction that I see. That's the difference between being an entrepreneur and being a leader. Now, a good entrepreneur should be a student of leadership. And if you're a business owner, a good leader should be a good student of entrepreneurship. So sometimes we see people that have both of those gifts or skills. And so we might sort of categorize them as, oh, they're a great leader. But what we find when we really break it down is that you find that there are some certain skill sets that lean towards more of an entrepreneur that might not necessarily always be the skill sets of a leader, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. And I'm thinking, even as an entrepreneur, sometimes you don't want to let go of your baby.
That's it.
As things
Yes.
get bigger, you don't want to let go. And,
Yeah.
like you said, that leadership piece is being the leader and letting go and
Yes.
delegating.
That's right. Yes.
So,
Yeah. And as you said, I've worked with small, medium-sized business owners, and in some situations, that is part of the reason why it remains a small, medium-sized business.
they
Is
won't
that
let
they don't want to let go,
go.
And as they say, if you want to get somebody to do something right, do it yourself. And that's not the right mindset of a good leader. A leader will realize that you find somebody that can do it at least 80% of what you can do.
Mhm. So, talk a little bit about the future of work.
The future of work, well, we don't really know because who knows the future? But we're definitely seeing trends that are happening that I think will impact most of us. And I do recall in the early 90s, just before the internet, you know, came to be, and there was a lot of talk about the World Wide Web and how it's going to change our lives. And in fact, I've got a Newsweek magazine that I've kept that predicted some of the things that would happen in the future. And I think for most of us, we read things like that, we hear things like that, and most people just don't take it seriously. Oh yeah, we'll still get on. But look at how the world has changed. In the 80s, what we're doing now was practically impossible.
Mm.
And that's how huge the internet has changed our day-to-day life. So what does the future look like? Well, when you actually think about robotics and when you think about machine learning and when you think about how artificial intelligence, all these things are playing a huge role in work, what we can almost predict is that certain manual jobs that human beings are currently doing, the machine would do it better than you.
Mm.
And that's a and that's a fact, right? So what it could potentially mean is that some people that are not in the process of, as I said earlier, developing themselves, reading, making sure that they're proactive in just upskilling themselves, they could find themselves in a bit of a conundrum where, what am I going to do because the robot has taken my job? Now, that might sound a bit funny, but but there's a reality to that. I can give you an example in the UK here, and I'm guessing it's the same in the States. We have our supermarkets, we have Tesco, we have Sainsbury's, and 5 years ago, 10 years ago, everybody queued up, and the person would help us swipe our food, and then we pay. Now, we, the customers, are doing it ourselves.
Mm.
And there's one person, maybe, or two people that are helping us out. That's a sign they need less people. Okay, maybe in the next 5 years, maybe we would have a robot in maybe a human kind of form who's able to handle all your shopping and everything, and actually might even be able to talk to you. We might not be able to see that in our mind's eye, but that's most likely something like that will happen. It's happening already in the stores, in places like Amazon, in places like these supermarkets. When we do online shopping, it's the robots that go and pick it up from the warehouse and pack it in the bag. So to answer the question specifically, the future of work is that most of us would need to really take our learning seriously to find ways of doing the kind of jobs that still need people. That yes, even though artificial intelligence, all that would be great, but I don't know if people would always want a robot to deliver the message. If it's bad news, for instance, sometimes you will still want the human touch.
Yeah.
So what that then means is I mean, some people have done some research about what are some of the skills that we human beings need to constantly keep on working on. It's things like empathy, listening skills, all the things that connect human beings to human beings are going to be even more valuable in the future of work. So you can have robots who are doing the day-to-day grinds, the accounting and all that, but you can then have a project manager who is overseeing a team of people who are overseeing the robot, something like that.
Yeah.
And what that project manager would need to have as a skill set would be being able to understand the people that are working on the project, connect with them, be human with them, which would push things like being vulnerable, being empathetic, being real, not being a hierarchical leader. And that's where things are going in the future.
Yes. And that last thing you said hit my ears. That kind of leader that, that's starting to go away. Where
Yeah.
that was the norm for years. The alpha male
Yes.
running the company, and just what I
Yeah.
say goes, and they weren't really asking people's opinions, and
Yeah.
that's changing.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's changing. And and that's why, again, if we can if we can train leaders of startups to have that mindset right from the beginning, I believe we can be creating, yes, some of the bigger organizations of the future with the right mindset right at the beginning, because maybe it was part of their ethos, it was part of their principles right from day one. And that's why I'm very passionate about this whole leadership for startups.
Yes. So if someone came to you and they're starting a business and you're going to work with them, where would you start with them? Would you start with them with mindset?
Yeah, I mean, I would start with obviously there are always two sides to a business. Some people might think it's their product idea that's the key thing, but I would normally try and get the person to think about the overall vision and what is the service they're trying to deliver. Is it doing good? That's a question to first of all ask yourself. That is your business adding value to people's lives? Because even if you have a product idea, you might end up, based on some of the processes that we now use when it comes to validating your business idea, you might find out that actually that's not what people want.
Hmm.
So having a higher level of service, you can still serve the audience, but that might reshape your product in itself. So that's where we'll start with. So we'll start off with thinking about the vision, the mission of that organization, and then the core values that you're holding yourself to. And that normally then eh, gets a bit deeper for the person to start thinking of, well, before you even start thinking about the core values of your organization, this is where self-leadership then comes in, which is, okay, what are your own personal core values? Because one thing that you don't want are to have core values written on the wall that you yourself don't believe.
Yes.
It was just an activity that you did because you're building a business. So I think things should always start off with self-leadership. What's your vision? What's your passion? What difference do you want to make as a person? And then we can build it from there. And that's how I would normally work with people, from the inside out, which I think is important.
Yes, it is important. And let's say someone brings you a product or service they want to bring to the market, but they're not sure if that's what the market wants. In other words, how do you guide them to find out what it is exactly that the market wants or what people want to buy?
Yeah, I think the research recently over the last 5-10 years has shown that our way of doing business is definitely, I can say the 80s, I can say that for sure, and the 90s maybe, was about, you had a business idea, you you wrote your business plan, a 5-year plan, and you kind of find some investors. They say, what are your numbers? You have these fictitious numbers. The graph is going up, the hockey stick. And
That's what I always thought about those plans. I thought they're just making it up.
Exactly. And but we now know that that's not true. It's your idea. So what the best thing to do is to do what's called a minimum viable product. So you take your idea, it could be a rough version, you then try and find out who your target audience is, because the first scale up stage of a business, the main task of the startup stage, the main phase of the startup stage is to find your customer. And what we mean by that is either you've got a product that's good, but who really wants the product? That's one question. And then in some cases, the people that you thought want the product don't actually want that product. They want something else. And we've seen this with platforms. We've seen this with certain products where the people actually shape what it ends up being. Even stories like PayPal wasn't actually, the original intent was not PayPal. It was actually more like a buying on using them to simply buy things online, to pay online, something like that. I can't remember exactly, but it evolved based on customer needs. So yeah, so the way to go about finding out if your idea is validated is to find the customer that is willing to buy the product. And so once you have real numbers, and once you can then articulate the type of people that are buying your product, then the next thing, are there many? Are there enough? Because you can have a very small segment of people that like this product, but it will never grow because there are not that many. So you need to do some research to find out, okay, who are these people? Can we identify this target audience? And do we know where to find them? The moment you can do that, you've got a business. Because if you know what they want, you know how to find them, then marketing becomes a lot easier, because what you then do is that you funnel your marketing to speak directly to that target audience. And you can almost then predict the conversion ratio. And now you can go to funders, you can go to your VCs, and now you can actually draw a proper graph.
Yes, with real numbers.
Yeah, with real numbers, exactly. And then you can from there go into the scale up stage.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that was really insightful. So I want to change gears a little bit and just ask you. You talked about core values. Toye, what are some of your core values? Your personal core values?
Well, I mean, so my story is when I was in Nigeria, as I said, I was in university. So a friend of mine, well, my brother actually, he came back to London, and then he started going to church and he became a Christian. And then a friend of mine, or ours, I met back in university. He was also saying, oh, he's starting to, go to church and read the Bible. So that got me intrigued, and I started to look into the scriptures. And when I came here in 1995, I got converted as a Christian. And so a lot of what has played a key role in my values are my Christian beliefs that we are here to do good, we are here to serve people. And so my values are based on the simple, even though it's challenging, the value of love, loving people, loving one another. And love in the sense that it's not the wishy-washy love that people define it, but actually the biblical sort of definition of love is doing what is best for others. It's as simple as that. And so that will be the thing that drives me the most, which is the question that, am I doing my best for others? Am I serving people the best way I can? Am I helping people see things the best way? So those would be my core values, which is being a person of character, being a person that wants to simply love and serve and respect all people. Those would be things that are definitely my own core values.
Thank you. And now you are a father. How
Mm.
old are your kids?
10 and 6.5.
Boys, girls?
It's a girl, she's 10, Tyra, and Toby, he's 6.5.
Ah, nice. And so, as a Christian man, how does that change the way you are a father and a family man? And how has that changed your life?
Well, I'm definitely very grateful for my children. At one point, my wife and I thought we might not be able to have children. We did have some unfortunate, unforeseen miscarriages at later stages, 5 months, 6 months. And prior to that, my wife was being told that maybe she might not conceive. So seeing my children is a joy, definitely. I think as we've been talking about the future of work and all the impact of the internet, obviously I do have legitimate concerns for my children in terms of what world are they growing up in.
Mm.
Um, this is not the same world that I grew up in. I didn't have access to videos 24/7, all sorts of stuff. So there's a bit of a challenge of not having a role model to say, this is how my parents dealt with this issue, because that was a completely
Yeah,
different template.
yeah, it is totally different.
So yeah, exactly. So it's something that one is always seeking wisdom from other people that have gone ahead of us. And again, really trying to create an environment with our children where we can have open conversations, where, the goal is not to be religious at all, but to be human, to know that we're not perfect, for them to see our own mistakes, for us to talk about when we do wrong, for us to apologize, to role model um, both good behavior, and when we ourselves aren't demonstrating good behavior, to role model acknowledging that that's not good. So and speaking to our children and role modeling what it means to apologize or redirect your behavior. That's what we're doing. Obviously they're still quite young, so maybe in 10 years time we could see how that is. But yes, but those are some of the principles we're trying to put in place, to have a good sort of relationship with them and pointing them to the reasons why we do this, is from our biblical convictions.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing that. And my next question was, what gives you the most joy? But I've heard your relationship with Christ. I've heard your children, your family. Is there any other things that really give you joy or that you're very grateful for?
Yes. I mean, to be honest, living in a time like this, in fact, I was just sharing this with my wife on Sunday about we are living in a world where opportunity is beyond what maybe any other generation has ever had, especially for us that are living in the West in particular. But I think when you really think about it, in other places as well, there are parts of Nigeria where I'm originally from, where it's the same opportunities to there if people see it. But I'm definitely grateful for living in a time like this. For instance, this podcast, the fact that this could be listened to anywhere in the world, when you really step back and think about some of the things that we have access to, it's amazing. And I want to sort of enjoy the fact that just by chance I'm living in this era. So I want to make the most of it. And I think that also makes me very joyful in terms of we have opportunities that other generations didn't didn't get to live in. And so can I do my best? Can I be all in
Mhm.
so that when I expire, I give it my best shot?
Mhm. Wow. So, what is your best advice for others on how to live a life that's fulfilling on purpose?
Mm. Well, I think the first um, thing to do would be to take time to ask certain questions. I definitely believe that as much as there's a lot of opportunity for all of us, the problem we have is too much choice. I think it was Peter Drucker that said that the problem that we are having is that we have too much choice and we're not ready for it. And what that means is that we're so busy, most of us are so busy, that reflection and taking time out to pause is becoming less and less what we do. And so many of us are missing out. So, to answer your question directly, I think that all of us at some point in our lives should really ask some meaningful questions. Who am I? Why am I here? What's my purpose? Who am I living for? And just get a journal and just really reflect on that, because it might take you in directions that you've never thought of. Obviously, as a believer, I believe that those are the kind of questions that can help somebody be open, to exploring God and the Bible and Jesus and things like that. But you don't impose that on people because it's a discovery.
Mm.
And the reason why I believe that there's a distinction between being religious and being faithful is because faith is something that comes from within the person. The person sees the unseeable, it's not imposed on them. And the only way that that comes is when that person is curious to inquire with an open mind and an open heart. And then whatever they find becomes real to them. And so that's what I would suggest, um, how people can, go about finding, you know, true success or their purpose.
I love that. Real to them. I love that.
Mm.
That. So now you have given us your time, and I know that people would like to know more, especially people who are entrepreneurs, they're startup entrepreneurs. I know that little bit you gave them about finding a customer and the product and everything has whet their appetite. And you have a vehicle to share even more. You want to tell us about your podcast?
Yes, yes. I'm very excited to say that over the last month or so, launched a podcast. It's titled Leadership for Startups. And you can find it on iTunes, on any of the platform. But better still, go to leadershipforstartups.com, and then you can subscribe to your favorite podcast platform. And better still, if you click on, we've got a 12 successful characteristics of entrepreneurs. You can download that as well. And that way we will be in touch. You can get my newsletter and also subsequent podcasts that I release. So we'll be happy to engage with you on that platform.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast and for your wisdom. It's just, I'm still thinking about some of the things you were talking about. So thank you so much for your wisdom and for sharing your faith. And I just wish you the best of luck and success as you continue on and as you share your gifts with the world.
Oh, thank you, Kimberly. It's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure being on the show with you. And I wish you every success with this podcast as well.
All right. Thank you. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right, then. Thank you.